Welcome to the Empowered Podcast, episode 54. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Empowered Podcast. Today, my guest has one of the craziest histories that I have ever heard, but it's also one of the most inspiring and encouraging stories that I have ever heard. And I want to share her history and her background with you. And if you're going through a tough time in your life, if you're going through some struggles or some challenges, maybe Berni's story will help you. Let me welcome to the show, Berni Xiong.
Thank you, Ellery, for having me. It's so awesome to be here.
Well, I'm glad we could finally connect. I just want everybody who's listening to know I did drop the ball. I've been meaning to have Berni on the show for quite a long time, and I just never followed up.
Hey, you know
with
what?
The right
it's totally cool.
So.
It's totally cool because I have a surprise for you. You probably didn't know this, but This morning, literally when I woke up, I found out that the book that I uploaded onto Kindle is now available in Amazon as of this morning. So that being said, it was perfect timing.
Tell us the title of your book.
Absolutely. It's called The Year of the Brave Bear. Speak Up, Stand Out, Change Your World.
That's awesome. Because if I remember correctly, the bear is a very important symbol to you, right?
It is. It is. Brave bear. My full name, Bernadette, in French means brave as a bear. And I'm sure I'll get into that discussion today. But I didn't realize that until the internet came out and I was able to research, where did it come from? What does this name mean? And I wasn't sure if I was really into all of that stuff at the time. But when I found out that my name meant brave as a bear, I freaked out because I'm like, I have been a scaredy cat my whole life. There's no way I have this name. But I found that out probably in my late teens, early 20s. And so, I'm in my late 30s now. So I've had some time now to really reflect on what it means to be brave. And so we're going to talk quite a bit about having bravery, having courage, and, getting past fear and getting out on the other side alive and roaring, with your authentic voice.
Yeah, absolutely. I will have a link to that book in the show notes directly to Amazon if anybody wants to pick that up after listening to this episode. I'm pretty sure you will, because I heard Berni's story once, and I immediately knew that I had to have her on the show, like I said before. So, Berni, why don't you take us through some of these events that are in your life that maybe somebody can listen to your story and say, I'm going through something similar, and if Berni did it, I can do it too, and come out better, stronger, and like a bear on the other side.
Yeah, I love this question. And I love this podcast for that reason too, because what I also do is a podcast and web show every week. And the whole premise of that show and the whole reason why it started more than 18 months ago was because I found out that I wasn't the only one who was scared shitless about, oh my gosh, I'm an entrepreneur. How am I going to make the next, check so that I can pay that bill? And how am I going to be good enough to sustain and go out into the world and change the world, but also earn a living doing it, And so there was a lot of doubt and fear. And I found that I wasn't the only one thinking and feeling that way, and that there were so many other people like me, which, at the time I called myself a solopreneur, but, nowadays I call myself more of a creative entrepreneur, because I find creative ways to go out and do great things in the world and find several streams of income to support me so that I don't freak out every time. And the show evolved out of that whole, gosh, how am I going to do this alone today? And I realized there were other people like me. So we got on Google Hangout and we'd have conversations and we'd talk about, what are you afraid of right now? What are you working on that freaks the crap out of you? Or what keeps you up at night? Or did you always have confidence? Or, where did you learn how to build that bravery and that strength? And in more than 100 conversations I've had with all of these amazing people, Ellery, I found out that there is a common thread in all of these people and kind of the way their lives were shaped over time from where they were to reach the level of success that they had. And they had failed a lot. You know, there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of failure. There was a lot of, I'm not good enough. And I don't know if anybody's going to come and read this. And I don't know if anybody's going to come and buy this. But you know what? I'm just going to show up anyway and keep doing it because my heart's in this. I believe in this enough. And over time, people don't ever get rid of fear. I don't think that eliminating fear completely is possible or that it's actually even good. And I think those who are not afraid, people who call themselves fearless in the context of, I have no fear at all, you're either crazy, delusional, or you know what I mean? Like arrogant, you know, and the most successful people who have been really kind and helpful people in my life who have mentored and shaped me have been so generous, and they reached their success because they admitted, you know what, I'm scared, but I'm still going to get up and do this work. And I'm going to tell you that I'm scared so that I can show you how and help you get through the fear as well and get up and do this work. So that's kind of like the long-winded preface to, you know, the stories I'm going to tell. But like your podcast, I'm on that same mission, man. I really want to help people realize fear's going to be around for a while, guys. So let's get comfortable with it and let's find a way to work through it together. It takes a village to move mountains.
And before we get too much further, because I'm really eager to hear again the stories and maybe some new ones that we can share. But you said something that is almost insane in and of itself. We get set in, I don't want to say our ways, but we get set in like, no one else is like me. No one else has had this terrible divorce, or no one else has had this bankruptcy, or no one else has had this same type. But you have a very unique past, and you were able to find other people who, maybe not all of it, but individual pieces with individual people, like, hey, I'm not alone. And the more frustrated we get and the more down and depressed that we get, the more we need to connect with other people, but the less likely we are. Right. But once we do, we find I'm not completely alone in this. There are other people who have figured it out and you know, they made it. Right.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because I know there was kind of a question in there. We're alone, Ellery, because we don't tell the truth. I mean, I believe that that's just the bottom line. You know, like when I first started coaching, you know, I don't call myself a life coach anymore, but when I kicked corporate in 2008 and started a coaching practice, I entered the world of life coaching, and I didn't really know much about the profession itself. I didn't know much about social media and, you know, how to build a community and a tribe and whatnot. And so I just went out into the world and told everybody, hey, I'm awesome. I'm a life coach and I've got everything figured out and let me fix you, you know. And I didn't say it like that, but I mean, that's how it came off. And I realized when I looked back at the marketing messaging that I had and the way I'd branded myself, of course, nobody's going to come and relate to me because I'm perfect on a pedestal. And how can anybody relate to that? Why would anybody want to come and buy that when they don't see how they could ever touch that? They could never reach that. And it was, gosh, probably about 3 years, to be quite honest with you, when I finally started peeling back those layers and going, you can't keep telling people you're perfect because you're not. And you've got to be okay with saying, you know what, I don't know the answer, but I know this. And I know you don't know that. So if you want help, I'll help you with that. But I don't know this over here. And I'm okay with that because it doesn't make me a bad coach. It makes me an honest coach. And I'm telling you the truth. And I found that the more and more I shed those layers and the more and more I told the truth, the more and more people engaged me because they're like, holy crap, she's scared. Or like you said, she had a bankruptcy. She was married young. She was divorced young. You know, she was domestically abused, you know, like all these things they'd hear. And they're like, holy crap, you went through that and you're still here. I like you even more now, you know? So for me, I found myself becoming addicted to telling the truth because more and more people could relate, more and more I could be helpful. And again, I took myself off of my lone island because now people knew that they could confide in me because I've been there. Whereas before, on my perfect lone island, they could never touch it.
what's crazy is when I use those as examples, I didn't even know that that was part of your story, but it's all of, we all have varying degrees of crap in our
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah.
And I didn't even want to say we're all equally have a bunch of crap, but some things are worse than others.
are.
But I wasn't even remembering that part of your story when I said that, and here
Well,
we
you were
are
right.
connecting
You were right.
on something like that. So take us. I don't know when. I don't remember exactly when things started. When you started realizing that your life was not exactly how you had planned it to be. I don't know if you grew up watching Disney movies and said, "Hey, that's not me," or do you remember when that was? And can we go there and move and bring forward?
We can go there because I didn't remember either when it was. And I'll tell a quick story to kind of preface that. But I had a best friend from, I think, third grade to about ninth grade. And then she moved away at the end of ninth grade. So we lost touch for a while. And maybe 3 or 4 years ago I think it was like 2008 or 9, she found me on Facebook and she's like, "Hey, Bernie, I haven't talked to you forever." And at that point, I swear it was like probably 20 years since we last talked. And she was asking me where I was. And I found out that we were both in the same city. We literally lived within 3 miles of each other. I'm not even kidding you, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, when I lived there at the time. And so we found ourselves like, oh my gosh, we're in the same place. Let's hang out. So that night we went and talked for hours because, we have to catch up from 20 years, And during our conversation, I think I said something along the lines of, "Gosh, would you have ever thought that your, former best friend would become a life coach?" And she goes, "Yeah, actually, I can see you being one." And I paused, Ellery, and I'm like, "Really?" I said, what made you think that? Like that's weird to me. And she said, "Bernie, as long as I remember you, I mean, we were like 10 years old and you were giving me advice on relationships." And I was like, I was. And, so she took me back to a time and remembered something about me that I was too close to see myself. Right. And so for her to say that, then I kind of dug back in my memory, like, what was I doing at like 10 years old? Or how was I at this age? And what kind of things was I into? And I realize now when I look back, I think the age was about 10. When I really started to be philosophical and I think about life and making a difference and wanting to be a good person and wanting to travel the world and help people. Like I never had that growing up, Ellery. We were in a blue collar family. We were on welfare for a while. And my parents, I'm first generation Hmong American, which means that none of my family were born here. So we didn't know the normal American norms. I mean, the culture was weird to us, and so I lived in this cross-cultural home where I'd eat with my fingers in the house and I'd go to school and pretend I know how to use a fork, so it's like it was very strange and weird, but I had this insatiable hunger in me to want to grow up and be a good person and change the world. Like it's weird that I forgot that because I think I almost always knew it in my gut, but I think I logically forgot that it's been around for quite some time. So 10 years old, I think, is when I kind of had that first awakening. And it wasn't until I was probably between 26 and 30 years old when I really started to realize I'm wasting time, wasting space here, do something different. And that was around the time I decided to kick my job to the curb and start becoming an entrepreneur and a coach.
Well, it's one of those things where you might be like me in this, Bernie. We have a success in life, or we have this when shortly after an event, a good thing has happened. We have this self-realization, or our book hits bestseller. We have a short kind of grace period, and then all of a sudden we start doubting, like, did I really do what I thought I did? Did I deserve to have this? And then, like you're saying here, you over a 20-year period between having this moment and reconnecting with your friend, you forget, like, was it just a dream that I did this? I don't know if that's happened to me. Like, yeah. I had a book that hit #1 bestseller on Amazon, and within hours I was like, did I really just game the system? Am I, it's just these doubts, like you're saying, that what truth is, or However, you said it so much better, like we're lying to ourselves.
It's true.
But that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that you brought that up because I think this is what I always say to my clients because I always hear the same thing from them. They're like, I help people with this very thing all the time. I can't do it myself. And I always say to them, I said, be kind to yourself. You're too close to this, right? Whether it's a project, whether it's a product, or whether it's a service, or whether it's a relationship with your spouse, you're too close to it that you can't see past your nose. And that is why you need a partner who can hold you accountable. That is why you need maybe a mentor or a coach or somebody to help you navigate through things. It's not that you're an idiot. It's not that you're not smart enough. It's that you're too dang close to it and that you need somebody to help you step back away from it so that you can see the bigger picture. And so for me, that happens all the time. And you're right. I'm always dumbfounded too. We're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. And that is right. I read in my journal that this was going to happen. And here, 20 years later, it did. So I think sometimes we just forget just because we're so close to it. And so much has happened in that time gap that we do often forget that all the progress we made all that time has led up to where we are now. That's why people always, not always, but there's a lot of people who take shortcuts and who think that, overnight success can be accomplished. And don't get me wrong, some people can, by some fluke in the system, by some, sheer luck, they can. But
I'm ready to be an overnight success.
Right? But many of us, our overnight success is 20 years in the making. You know what I mean? So I think what you just said right there is it's parallel with this whole overnight success ideology. It's that we've been working at it since we were 10, 15, 20 years old. Why wouldn't we eventually achieve at the level that we wanted to?
So at 10, you remember realizing that you had a knack for noticing things. When did things start to become less than smiles and roses?
Around 16. 16, I was really confused. Again, I grew up in a family where it wasn't a normal American family. So we were very self-sufficient, we kids. And, I remember at even like 8 years old walking from school by myself and stuff, or like writing excuse slips to my teachers because my parents couldn't read or write in English, So like I kind of felt like I was ahead of my time. I was like an old soul for a very long time. So by the time I was 16, all my siblings had moved out of the house. I'm the baby in the family. And I remember thinking to myself, I was left with my mom and dad. And I remember thinking to myself, they're all going on with their lives. Kind of like, this isn't fair. I don't want to be here. This is boring. And I'm in high school still. I'm a sophomore at the time. And I remember in my head going, I want more. This isn't good enough for me. I want to hurry up. I want to speed this up. Let's grow up. And so I was dating a guy at the time in Milwaukee. I lived in Green Bay, which are both in Wisconsin, about 2.5 hours drive apart from each other. And back then we didn't have internet, so long distance was really long distance.
Really long, yeah.
Right. And I remember thinking, you know what? I think I'm ready. I want to get married. It's accepted in our culture, even though I didn't really grow up traditional. I just grew up different. I'm like, my culture is going to be okay with it. So, okay, I'm going to grow up. I'm going to start my own life and do my own thing. And so around 16, I made the decision to get married young. My mom and dad were livid. But, in our culture, if they don't accept, it's disrespect. So they knew that they would have to say yes. Or otherwise, there'd be trouble, with the elders. And I didn't want my parents to be put on the spot like that, but I really thought I was in love at the time. And I think in a way I kind of was, but what 16-year-old knows anything about love, right? So yeah, it was around that time that I made that decision. And that's when everything flipped upside down. It was not all peaches and cream like I thought it was going to be. I'm like, we're going to be in love. We're going to have a house and kids and do all this great stuff. And I'm like, I'm 16. I have no job. I don't have a driver's license, and he was in a gang at the time. And so, how do you go from gang and, a girl with no license and no future ahead of her, both high school dropouts at that time, and you want to start a life? Are you freaking kidding me? I'm like, what were you thinking? And I'm like, all in the name of love. It's going to work out, So obviously there are no regrets. We ended up having one kid together. And so I was a mom at 17 and a half. And, I finally got my driver's license too around that same time, and so then I realized this is real life. Like, this is real. I really need to go and do something with this because this is the path I chose. And I obviously was yearning for something. So let's be responsible and do what we need to do. And so, it was a good, I would say, 18 months of a transition that I had to go through, leaving my family, having to let them all go, leaving behind my single life, my friends, because in the culture, they ask you to do that. Otherwise, it's, again, disrespect if you try to be single but you're married. And then now I'm entering into a new family, living in a household of like more than 13 people in a 4-bedroom house. And I'm like kind of like the second mom in the house because I'm just, sort of the second oldest. And now I'm watching, 11 kids,
Wow.
and all of a sudden my kid's about to come and we've got this huge family and it's like an extended family and everybody's all up in your business. And I'm still trying to go to school, have a husband, help raise this family. And I'm only 17, and so it was a lot to take in because I found myself later on often saying, why did I make this decision? Like, I just want to be a normal teenager. This is nuts. This is crazy. But, in hindsight, I realized it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me because now, in my late 30s and, obviously divorced, there's so much that I learned in that experience. And it was, no matter which family it was, whether it was his or my family, I learned the power of how strong unconditional love is in terms of like the way your family loves you, like nobody else can love you. I learned that from his family and I learned it from my own family. And I think at 16, 17, I didn't really appreciate that kind of unconditional love like the way I do today at 37, because now that is what I work for and that is what I live for. I live and work so that I can have personal freedom to spend time with the people I love. And that's my family, my parents, my siblings who I did not live nearby for over 20 years, Ellery. And I would see them just like 1, 2, 3 times a year. That doesn't seem like any fun kind of life, leaving home at 16 and only seeing your family a couple times a year. And, we only live to be 80, 90 or whatever. It doesn't seem like, it seems too limited for me. So anyway, that is kind of the greatest lesson I learned in that experience was at the end of the day, no matter what happened, I love family and I value it so much. And I learned so much from both families. And I think as a result, it made me a better person today with better stories to tell so I can help other people live better lives as well.
When you were just throwing out ages, Bernie, made me think of something. Let's call it 100. Let's say we do live to 100. If we had $100 and that was all that we had to eat on for a month, we would be holding on to that 100 really tight, and we wouldn't just carelessly give that over to somebody. We would want to cherish every part of that, every $5, every $10, every $20. But how likely are we to throw away 20 years?
Yeah. Yeah.
When you said that, I got that analogy in my head because I know so many people have just, what did I see on Facebook? Are you living or are you just paying bills until you die?
Mm-hmm.
And you're just saying basically the same thing. Like you've got to cherish that time. And so I'm curious, when you were living with 11 or 12, how many you said, did you grow up fast or did you stay a kid?
I grew up pretty fast because, my ex-husband was the eldest son. And so when
and you were the youngest.
Right. And when you bring in a wife into, the family and it's the first daughter-in-law, as they call it, it's my responsibility to kind of be like the deputy mom for when the mom's not around in our culture. So it's kind of like they have to look up to me like I'm kind of another mother figure sort of, even though I'm like a sister-in-law. And so, I was the baby. I didn't know how to take care of kids. Are you kidding me? I didn't even know how to change a diaper. I was so spoiled being the baby because everybody in my family loved me so much that by the time I'm taking care of these people and their ages ranged from like, at the time, I think it was like a year and a half all the way up to to one lady, actually she was older than me, but then the next eldest girl, she was only like 2 years younger than me, you know? So it's like, that's a lot of energy for me to manage, you know? And it definitely taught me a lot of patience because I didn't know how to be, you know, a sister to younger kids, let alone kind of sort of be a mom to these people. And then I even had my own kid, you know, so it was a lot to take in. But yeah, absolutely a huge lesson learned about understanding how to manage the way you behave and communicate with varying styles of behaviors and communication, which I use quite a bit in my business today. I'm not even kidding you.
I bet. Can I ask how long you guys had stayed married after being...
Yeah, we were married for 10.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we can come back to that later, but I want to ask, somewhat stay in chronological order. I'm so interested about several different things. I want to try to make it sure it makes sense to everybody listening to this. So you were 17 and a half. You guys lived there. I think you said 18 months, but you were both high school dropouts. But I know, or I think I know that you ended up either getting a GED or going back to college and getting quite a bit of education, right? Or am I?
Yeah,
okay.
You're right about that.
What
What
happened next?
Yep. So I dropped out for about a little more than half a year, and I was itching to go back. So I'd applied to go to an alternative school. And
quick question.
Yeah.
Why were you itching to go back?
I don't
because
know.
people that age, like, school sucks. I know when I was in college, I went from high school. 3 months later, I'm at a 4-year university, and I'm playing video games and sleeping in, not really wanting to go to class. But here you are. Maybe you really did grow up, and you're like, man, this is not what I want. I need to get educated.
It's kind of selfish, though. It's kind of selfish because otherwise I was home taking care of kids. I mean, I'm not kidding you. I'm like, is this my life? Are you kidding me? So and obviously my husband at the time, he urged me to. He's like, you're the smart one, you know, in the family. You're the one who can possibly make it, you know, because you're really smart. You're really good at stuff. He's like, just go back when you're ready. And he didn't really believe in himself. And that's kind of the dynamic in the relationship that did hurt us. You know, at time it helped us because I lifted him up at times, and sometimes he helped me to have great self-esteem because he looked up to me. But then there were times where it's like he'd pull me down, or maybe I'd feel resentful because he wasn't, you know, quite at that level. And we're not just talking intellect here, you know, we're also talking about behavior too. He and I definitely had an emotionally turbulent relationship. But when I decided to go back, I'm like, I'm sick of this. I don't want to just be good for nothing. My parents didn't raise me this way. You know, I need to go back to school. So I'd applied to go to an alternative school, and I was on the waiting list because it was new. Like, alternative schools back then were in beta. Like, we didn't know if it worked yet, right? And so when I finally got in, I loved it. So basically, all you have to do is there's like a time frame, right, between 7:30 and I think like 3:30. All you have to do is just show up for 2.5 hours. Any time between that, go grab your binder and do your homework, you know, kind of like self-study. All the homework's in there. You know, you can go far ahead if you want to. You know exactly what needs to be due. And the homeroom teacher is there waiting to help you if you have any questions. And you get credit too if you work. So I also had a job. So I got 1 credit for working, but then I'd also get the credit for showing up 2.5 hours a day. And so I completed my high school diploma at the end of, I think it was like 1.5 years that I was in school there. And I only graduated 6 months after my original high school graduating class. So I wasn't too far behind. Yeah. It was actually pretty cool. And then one of the most amazing things that anybody had ever said to me, the principal and my homeroom teacher came up to me and they said, you know, Bernadette, you are the ideal student that this program was created for. They're like, you show up, you do such great work, you help your fellow classmates, you're really smart, you're diligent and you're disciplined, and your work ethic is so phenomenal. And the way you carry yourself, you're going to do great things. And I'll never forget that they said that, because here I was, you know, people around me, you know, former friends or like family members or whatnot, laughing at me for going to a reject school, right? They're looking at me going like, oh gosh, like whatever, you know, you're better than that. But here I am at a school where I'm the cream of the crop, and them saying, thank you, you give us hope because this program was made for people like you. it was such a beautiful reminder to me that I don't need to be in the traditional and the conventional setting that we normally seek approval from to validate that I'm good enough. The school program was created for somebody like me who wasn't traditional, who wasn't conventional, but yet she was still smart enough and good enough to pull through and get to the other side. And like that experience, I was embarrassed at the beginning to say, oh yeah, I graduated from alternative school. But within like, I would say the first 3 or 4 years of my professional career when I started working, I was proud to say that I went to an alternative school because I got to tell the story of transformation and how everybody remembered that I was the student who this program was perfect for. And now I've got that story to tell. And I'm like, man, I would do it all over again.
You know, I'm almost, my degree's in psychology, and so I've studied a lot of that. And but part of me, Bernie, thinks, you know, it's good to have structure, and we need to learn. I feel stupid even for saying this because I teach now that you shouldn't do this, but part of me feels like you should go and follow this path and learn the structure and rules. Again, I think that's kind of stupid now. But I keep going back on the other. So that's part of what I think, and I'm beginning to realize that sounds as dumb as I think it does. But I keep going back to this story of these animals, and they're, you know, being tested, and the quote on this infographic, whatever, says, if we judge every animal by its ability to climb a tree, this fish would think it's stupid.
Yeah, I saw that quote and I love that. Yeah.
And it's the same thing that what you're saying. And again, I feel stupid at this very moment for even saying you should follow this structure and whatnot. But I do think that we need structure in our lives. That being said, not going to school for 8 hours a day, you know, that's okay. You were able to do it in a shorter amount of time. I've always said I could probably have finished high school in 3.5 years or 3 years. Like all of senior year, I was doing like study hall and was it student council, and there are ways within the structure of school that you don't even have to go most of your senior year. So it could be done in less, and not everybody is meant to sit in a hard plastic chair for 7 or 8 hours a day to learn. And if we judge everybody by their ability to do that, the fish is going to think it's stupid because it can't climb a tree.
Right. I love that. And the other thing I'll add too, because I agree with you, and I'll also add that, you know, what works for one person isn't for everybody else. I mean, the only reason the alternative school worked for me was because I was not your traditional student. I was married at 16. You know, I had a kid at 17 and a half. Now, if I never was married and I didn't have a kid, I probably would have hated the alternative school. I probably would have not been disciplined. And here's why. I was disciplined and I worked hard because I needed to make money. I needed to earn a living so that I could be responsible and be a good mother and a good wife.
You saw the alternative.
Absolutely. And if I was still single, had the traditional upbringing, and I went to an alternative school, I wouldn't have had the hunger the way I did being married. So that's why alternative school worked for me, because I wasn't, you know, I'm doing air quotes, I wasn't average. I wasn't normal, right? But so I do believe what you're saying. There definitely needs to be structure. But those who have learned structure and they need to break out of that mold so that they can create their own kind of structure, that's awesome. But, you know, but if there's somebody who is not quite good at being disciplined and structured and regimented on their own, then yeah, they absolutely need to go somewhere a little more strict, because I think otherwise it'll be too freeing for them and they won't know what to do.
Yeah, the people who seem to make the most impact in the world are the ones who break the mold and kind of forget the structure. I'm just thinking Mark Zuckerberg, Mark Cuban, Michael Dell, you know, all these people, they broke the orders that were handed down to them. Yeah. So you win, you got your, we would call it a GED here in Texas. Oh, okay. I don't know.
It's just a high school diploma for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically general something diploma.
General equivalency diploma.
There you go. Right. There you go. So after that, you have graduated with your high school diploma. You're 19 or so, 8 or maybe 18?
I was 19. Yep.
And a couple years into marriage, baby. It's a year and a half
Yep.
old or so. What does Bernie do
Yeah,
next?
so that's really cool because then, again, I take the story of struggle, right? Because it could have been, oh gosh, these colleges are going to look at me and think I'm not good enough because I went to an alternative school. But instead, I took the story of struggle and I made it a transformation story. So in an essay that I wrote to make it into the university that I wanted to go to, which was Milwaukee at the time, I wrote about how I got married young and decided to turn my life around after realizing how difficult it was, and that I've changed my life, and that I ended up being second in class in my high school graduating class, and that here are all the different things that I've done. Here's the struggle that my family went through to allow me to get here. And I just went on about how instead of seeing it as a deficiency, that I was able to transform and I'm a better person as a result. And here's what I'm going to do with the opportunity if you let me in your school or if you let me have the scholarship. And I got accepted and I won one of the awards. And I got a full scholarship to go to the
Wow.
University of Milwaukee. And I was like, what? Like, this is crazy. I went to an alternative school. I graduated 6 months late, and you're picking me, 1 out of 8 people, to get a scholarship, full ride? Are you kidding me? So it was amazing, Ellery. I ended up graduating with a business administration degree with a specialty in marketing. And then a couple of years after that, I took a break for a little bit. And a couple of years after that, I got the itch to go back to school again. I swear, there's this itching thing. And I ended up going for my MBA and graduated with that in 2 years. And then I actually got the itch to go back again a couple of years ago. I didn't finish the program because I definitely realized that's not what I wanted to do anymore. But I got accepted into a doctorate program for education. So I was going for my EDD, and I ended up changing my mind. And I ended up saying, thank you for letting me get this far. But I don't think I need to keep going anymore. I think I was still going for the status, if you will, or the recognition to say the only way I can show people that I've made it, right? Or the only way I can show people that I'm somebody of significance is to follow the path that I think people want me to follow. And I haven't said this yet in this conversation, but I've said it before in a lot of different talks I've given and conversations I've had on podcasts. But my vision of success, because I actually had an avatar in my mind. My vision of success when I was younger, he stood 6 feet tall with gray hair, a navy blue suit, shiny brown leather shoes, and a leather briefcase and a red tie. And that to me was success. So when I chased success, I was chasing all the different things that I was guessing that this guy would chase. So, okay, I think he's going to have a business degree. Okay, I think he probably works in sales and he's going to work himself up to be like a CEO or something. I think he has, maybe a doctorate degree. Maybe he's going to be a professor. I don't know. He speaks in front of large audiences and he's really smart and he's very motivational, and he has to look distinguished. That's why he's got the gray hair. So I was picturing all of these different scenarios and thinking to myself, okay, that's why I'm picking this degree. Okay, that's why I'm going to go live in that penthouse apartment over there. Okay, that's why I'm going to drive this kind of car over here, and this is why I'm going to pick this kind of job over there and make this kind of salary, And after a while, I achieved all those things and I was excited. I'm like, woohoo. But it was woohoo for 1 second. And then a couple minutes later, I was like, now what? What's next? What else does he have? What else do I need to do? And then I kept chasing these things, Ellery. I kept chasing things. And so I kept doing more things to earn more of these things. And I was never fulfilled because this didn't satisfy the hunger I had in me. This just satisfied the external validation that I wanted from people to believe that I was good enough because I felt like I've messed up since I was 16. And I feel this is like my way of making up for it, I guess, like overcompensating. So that was around the time that I realized with all these degrees, with all this education, with all this work experience, being in sales for 12 years, that's when I realized like, oh my gosh, whose life am I chasing? This isn't my dream. This is that guy's dream. And so that's around the time that I had my moment of reckoning.
And I don't know if this is the over-analyzing part of my brain coming out, but you said distinctively he.
Yeah.
Do you think that was kind of a subconscious like I'll never be happy because I'm a girl and he is successful. He has gray hair. He has a suit.
Yeah, you're the first person to respond with that, and you are absolutely right. He is a man. He is Caucasian. He's likely American. And when I look in
The opposite of you.
Yeah. When I look in the mirror, it's like I'm never going to be that. Bernie, you're seriously not ever going to be that. What the heck are you doing? But great observation, because that's exactly where the disconnect came into play.
Now, I wish I didn't have something coming up in 15 minutes, because I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Well, you'll have to have me back on then.
Yeah. But I do want to just share. You had a lot of success and you ended up redirecting, but you did, like you mentioned, you did have the penthouse apartment. I think you said you were in New York at one point or something, or?
Well, I traveled a lot. Yeah, I traveled all across the U.S. and Canada.
And you were making a bunch of money doing what you were doing before you decided you wanted to get out of that, right?
Yeah.
Or just tell me if I'm not remembering everything.
No, absolutely. I mean, I was in corporate sales and I handled Fortune 500 companies. So I was traveling, every couple of weeks all over the U.S. and Canada, handling all, territory of, $1.5 million. And, I looked and felt important, so for me, I was wearing a suit quite a bit and I was busy running around, and I loved being busy and looking important at the time, which is so funny because if you ever meet me in person or if you know me personally, I'm not that person. Like I'm not like that, but I was doing that. Like I was seriously doing that. And so everything came to a head in 2008. Everybody remembers 2008. It was like the crappiest time and everybody was losing jobs. And I fortunately still had my job at the time. And something in me just felt like my gut was saying, enough is enough, Bernie. My goodness, how long are you going to stay at this? The leadership team treats all of you salespeople like crap. You've worked your butt off. You put in 60, 70 hours a week. You're always doing things for this company. When are you finally going to realize that you deserve better than that? Like your integrity is on the line here, Bernie. That's what I was saying to myself constantly. And one day when I finally realized enough was enough, that's when I walked out of my job, because it was like I had chased everything and I felt like I did everything right when I started correcting my life, if that's what you want to call it. And I got there and I kept moving up and I kept doing all these great things, getting more things. And it wasn't enough. It didn't sustain me emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And so that's when I made the decision, like, that's it. Like my integrity is being compromised. And that's the moment. And if there's any value my parents have ever taught me, it's to not compromise your integrity for anybody, for any reason. And they totally would have my back if I ever had to make a decision and I felt like my integrity is on the line. And it was for that job. So I kicked that job to the curb, started my coaching business, flopped. It failed miserably in the first couple of months. I'll fast forward through this quick, but, I got sick because stress was killing me. And so I got hospitalized for a whole week, Ellery, and I had no insurance because I just quit my job. So I had no insurance. I didn't pay for that Cobra thing. So I didn't have that. And $40,000 later, after my hospital visit and them not being able to find out what the culprit was, and they gave me prescriptions to just, let the pain go away. And, oh, by the way, you have a parasite in your colon now because you've been on that hospital bed for a week. And they starved me because they had to do tests. So I couldn't eat. I couldn't even drink water. I couldn't even suck on ice chips for the first 5 days. So I was, basically much lighter. I couldn't walk as a result. My muscles were like in atrophy, so it was nuts. It was like I was a different person completely. And, not to get all weird here, but that was around the time I felt like I was kind of reborn, it was December 2008. And I remember, and I grew up Catholic. I don't practice right now, but I do believe in God. And I remember shouting to God in December of 2008. I remember going like, why me? Like, why are you doing this to me? Like, I've had enough. I'm too tired to fight. I don't want this anymore. Like, just give me a sign. Give me some hope. This is just horrible. And I wanted to die. I didn't want to take my life, Ellery, but at that moment, I didn't have a job. I'd quit it. I started a business, but it failed because I can't go out and network, because I can't walk and I can't drive. And now I've got a $40,000 bill. And, and it's like, I'm paralyzed. I'm absolutely paralyzed. And I just remember thinking to myself, why did you ever leave your job? Like, who did you think you were? What were you doing, Bernie? You should have just played it safe. You should have just followed the rules. Why do you have to be so defiant? And I was saying all this stuff to myself, but I remember asking God, I'm like, why? Like, why are you doing this to me? And I didn't hear an answer, but it came to me like in like bursts of energy where there were signs and symbols, and it was kind of like in people in my life and people saying to me, it'll be okay, Bernie. Just get through today. That's all you need to do. Just get through today. And every day you'll get better and better. You'll be back to yourself again and you'll figure it out. But just get through today. Like, stop worrying. Don't go too far in the future, because it's impossible to foreshadow what's going to happen. But you can't go into the past either, because it's done. You can't change it. Where you need to be is right now, right here, where change can happen. And that was when I got beautiful words of advice from my coach at the time. And she said, embrace the present because it's a gift. And I'll never forget that, because from that moment on, that was December 2008, I've never looked back. I've never gotten to a point where I allowed myself to consider just whittling away to nothing, because there are greater things in life we are challenged with. There are many people in life who are struggling way worse than we are. And I'm not saying that our pain isn't valid. It's just, aside from death, and even, death actually, now that I think about it, isn't so bad, because once you're gone, you're gone. So it's like, there's no more pain, right? But aside from like getting, dying or, something like that, you can get through anything. Like, you really seriously can, but you can only do it if you just get through to today. And so that has been the mantra that I use. And it's been 6-7 years later now, Ellery, and I still have challenges. I still have struggles. I still have self-doubt. I still have fear, but I never forget that statement, which is the only place change can happen is right now. You just need to get through to today. Show up, do your work, do good work, be a good person, help others, and you'll get to the next day and the next and the next. And boom, there's your overnight success 20 years later,
That's fine. Every time I hear overnight success, it's
I laugh too. Yeah, I laugh too.
Well, I like I said, I feel like you've got such an incredible story, and I know I'm learning a lot, and I'm, as bad as it sounds, I'm entertained at the same time, and I'm very interested. And I think I will have to get you back on the show, because we've talked about everything up to basically 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. And in the last 10 years, you've said, I've had enough, which more people need to do. And more people need to realize that they're a number on a spreadsheet. Oh, by the way, I was going to tell you, you said this, and I didn't want to interrupt you. I worked for a Fortune 50 company up until about 6 months ago. Oh, wow. In 2012, I was the sales rep of the year. Oh, wow. I had the best performance voted by all the managers of a department of 150 people. And we were a $2 billion business. So right. That was in 2012. 12 months, almost to the day, Bernie, I was on an action plan because my performance sucked.
Oh, my gosh.
Facing my own historicals, where I had been averaging over 4 years before that, I averaged like 120% quota attainment on a $15 million number. And 12 years after, I have the trophy. It's in a box of stuff I never hope to look at again. 12 months, almost to the day, I'm on an action plan because my performance isn't good enough.
Oh my gosh. You're right. We definitely have parallel stories. That's nuts to me. That's awesome though.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I would love to have you on. I wouldn't air them back to back, I don't think, but I would love to hear more about what it was that was the catalyst to make you leave. What if there was an event like I've had, and like Carrie Oberbrunner told me yesterday.
He's awesome, by the way.
It was a good conversation. I can't wait to air that one too.
He almost made me cry on mine. So yeah, exactly.
We only had 30 minutes, and it was like the densest 30 minutes. It was awesome. So I do want to to see if we can get connected again. Are you coming to Podcast Movement?
No,
Are you able to
unfortunately,
do
I'm
that?
not. Yeah, August is crazy here. But yeah,
I hear you.
have a blast.
Well,
I hear it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I want to ask you what my final question that I ask everybody, but I'm going to ask you again when I have you on again, see if your decision or your answer is the same, or maybe you can just give two awesome responses. But what is one tip or piece of advice that you can give people who are really facing a challenge in their life? What's a tip or piece of advice that you can give them to help them get through it?
I love it. Yeah, I'm going to reiterate what I just said before, and it's embrace the present, because the present is a gift. And again, it's because that's the only place where change can happen. And there's another way that I've been saying it lately too, which I just made the correlation here. So thank you for your podcast, for helping me with this breakthrough. But I often say, show up and do good work every single day. Right? Because if there's anything that I can take away from all the lessons I've learned over the years, Ellery, when people say to me like, oh, Berni, like, how did you get to know that person? Or how did you reach that level of success? Or how did you do this? And how did you do that? It was always the same answer. I said, I went in it not with the intention for anything, but to just help and serve people. Like, I just want to do good work and help people. And in the process, people are reciprocating. They love what I do. They love my work because I'm here to help. And so that's what I would say to people. When you are feeling helpless, hopeless, in doubt, in fear, paralyzed, overwhelmed, even depressed, because I that runs in my family, the best thing you can do is to go offer help to somebody else less fortunate than you. And you will regain that energy and that empowerment and that inspiration to realize that you are good enough because you were able to contribute to somebody else in the world. And that helps you heal any pain or any doubt that you had about your own situation. So embrace the present, guys. I mean, that's the only place you can make change. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody show up with me.
Yeah, that's amazing. We can't forget, or we can't worry about the past or worry about the future. We can only do something today, and I love that. And like you said, do show up. Most the people who are unsuccessful, they just forget to show up. Like, I'll come in tomorrow. But showing up's, I don't know what the actual percentage would be or the hypothetical one, but yeah, I've heard showing up's just 80% of it, right?
Yeah, so. Absolutely.
Well, Berni, it's been and incredible. I don't know, we're at almost 55 minutes here or so. I'm loving this show, and I'm loving just the openness that you bring to me and to the audience. It's been an absolute pleasure to hang out with you today.
Thank you. The pleasure was all mine, and I can't wait to be back again.
Me neither. I'm like, how soon can we do that? Where I meant to ask before, but if someone wanted to connect with you, say they loved your story, or just thank you for hanging out with me today, where can I send them?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, so I'm changing that now. People can come to Brave Bear Media. That kind of houses all of the stuff that I do, especially the book that just came out that we talked about at the top of the show. So bravebearmedia.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Berni, and look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, Ellery.
Let me just tell you, when she said that she found herself becoming addicted to the truth, and how after she started sharing her story, how she started embracing her story and being true to herself, she was able to relate more with people and could help them out more, because she said now people knew they could confide in me because I had been there. I can't tell you how much I relate to her sharing that. When I interviewed Berni, I hadn't aired episode number 49 yet. And if you haven't listened to episode 49, it's kind of my tell-all story, just how I ended up being separated from my last job, how I got thrown into this full-time entrepreneurship journey, and honestly what's come about it in my life because of that. In fact, I was interviewed on Mike Sutton's show called Be, Build, Have, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes, empoweredpodcast.com/54. But he interviewed me. He wanted to talk to me because I shared my story. And I can't tell you how many people have commented on Facebook or sent me a message on Twitter. Ellery, you sharing your story was just like my story. It sounds like my life. You and Ashley talking was just like me and my partner, my wife, or my spouse talking. And just, I want to encourage you, if you are, not even if you're hiding or running away from your story, but if you're not fully embracing it, that's who you are. Your history's not going to change. Your background is not going to be any different just because you wish it to be different or just because you don't share it. That's who you are. And all of the things that you are fearing right now, fearing about sharing your story, fearing about opening up and revealing the mistakes and the missteps that you've had, none of that's going to go away by you keeping it in. And not only is it not going to go away, but it's probably preventing you from reaching your full potential and from really connecting with the people who would benefit from hearing your story, and you would benefit from sharing your story as well. I will have a special event if you are in the Round Rock, Texas area, or Austin, San Antonio, maybe up to Waco. November 1st, here in 2014, Saturday evening, I'm having a real-life, in-person, not a virtual meetup here in the Round Rock area. If you go to ElleryWells.com/meetup, you will get all of the details for that. There's not very many as of this very moment. I know the time, I know the date, but I don't know where because I want to make sure I have enough room to hold everybody who signs up. So if you go to ElleryWells.com/meetup, it will redirect you to my Eventbrite page. If you'd like to sponsor that event, you're more than welcome, but it is absolutely 110%. I lost my percentages there. It's absolutely 100% free for you to attend, come and connect, come and learn from online business owners, entrepreneurs, bloggers, podcasters. It's not going to be a huge crowd. It's going to be just perfect for you to come and connect. ElleryWells.com/meetup. Thank you for listening. I can't wait to get my next episode into your ears next week, next Wednesday. Thank you for listening to the Empowered Podcast. I'm your host, Ellery Wells. We'll talk to you soon.